welcome back to the program. And earlier in this week, I mentioned that the 3rd to the 7th of July this year will be Corporate Wellness Week. And we are joined by an entrepreneur, professional speaker, and leading business and executive coach, Harry Welby-Cooke, a country partner in ActionCOACH SA. Good morning, Harry. How are you doing?
Morning to you and the listeners, and I'm doing well. Let's see if we can create wellness for others.
Hopefully. So just before we started off, you mentioned not tomorrow coaching, it's action coaching. So just elaborate for all the listeners on that concept.
Absolutely. So we were joking saying Action Coach is at Action Cricket. No, Action Coach is a business and executive coaching company. And it is about in life the actions we take. That's why we joke and say it's not tomorrow coach, but it's Action Coach. So we're a global organization. We operate in over 80 countries around the world. And this year our global business is 30 years old. So myself and a business partner brought the whole concept to South Africa 16 years ago. And it's about saying, you know, in sport, you will always have a coach. To get to that level, you'll always need a coach. Well, the rules stay the same. The game stays the same, yet you still need a coach to perform. In business, the rules seem to change every 5 minutes, yet we think we can do it on our own. So it's very much about building more successful, more profitable, more sustainable businesses.
And as you mentioned, you are a global organization. So how does the business atmosphere in South Africa differ to that of other countries?
Well, I think, in South Africa, we always like to think it's different. And the reality is, whilst the nuances of business might be slightly different, maybe labor laws are different, tax laws may be slightly different, the essence of business is the same everywhere in the world. You need to generate income in a profitable way, manage your expenses, and hopefully have something left after to either reinvest into the business or extract or do some good or things like that. So at the core, I think business is the same. Obviously, in South Africa, we have seemingly an endless list of challenges that get thrown in our lap almost every day. But business is about solving problems. Business is about getting through the clutter that we sometimes face. And the better we can solve those solutions, add value, the more successful our businesses are.
And what would you say the top 3 common business operational issues affect many South African business owners?
I think if you really break it down to 3 kind of groups maybe of issues, it's time, team, and money. And generally speaking, it's not enough of any of those. We haven't got enough time. Well, every human being on the planet's got 24 hours. So what do we do with that time? We either don't have the right team, or we don't have a big enough team, or we don't have a performing team. So there's issues often around team and staff. And when you put people together, even in families, there's issues. So you've got issues around team. And then money. And whilst a lot of people say, well, money's not the everything. And absolutely it's not. But when there isn't money, it becomes the everything. So it's about managing that and ensuring everything around money is an issue. So I'd say time, team, and money is pretty much where most people struggle and where the opportunities are.
And going back to the topic at hand, which is Corporate Wellness Week, what would you describe as an unhealthy working environment?
Well, I think firstly, and just for everybody listening, we talk about Corporate Wellness Week, and the tendency is you might be thinking, well, this is for the big ivory towers, the big corporate businesses, the glass palaces in the CBD. No, it's for everybody, every person that works in a company, every business leader, every business owner. So how does one bring about that wellness? And I think there's different ways to unpack toxicity, but I think what the core of it is when something is not sustainable, it's toxic. Because you might be able to force it through, you might be able to get it working now, but will it work next week? Will it work next month? And if not, then it's toxic. And then one needs to look at that and find ways of addressing that.
And as you mentioned, the sustainability is very important in businesses. And not only do you focus on large corporations and businesses, but also individuals. So zooming in onto an individual entrepreneur who can also have a toxic work environment, how would you compare someone in a larger workplace as opposed to someone working maybe on their own with 1 or 2 other people?
So I think, and just to maybe oversimplify it, is not always so easy. I think people that work in a corporate business, the staff now, generally speaking, are stressed. They're under pressure to perform. There is a level of anxiety and things that comes with it. Often what we find in an entrepreneurial business is the business owner or owners are trying so hard to keep their staff happy that they are the ones absorbing all that stress. They are the ones that are absorbing all of that. I'm not saying you mustn't try and do that, but you can't take all the stress on yourself. And often a business owner does that, whereas in a bigger corporate company, it's spread throughout the organization. And I think therein lies some of the issue. I think when people go and start their own business, and on a government form it says occupation, everybody puts self-employed, whether they got people working for them or not. Well, who opens up first in the morning? Self. Who goes to bed last at night? Self. Who gets paid last because everybody's trying to pay their staff first? Well, self. So that self-employed is a very stressful environment, probably more so than what many people believe. And I think what also happens is entrepreneurship per se is a very lonely journey. You know, in a bigger corporate, you've always got a team, you've got a strong executive committee, you've got an outside board of directors. Sometimes it's you and you alone, or you and your wife, or you and your father, or you and your brother. And that becomes a challenge. So it's really about saying, let's take a step back from the emotion of business and find ways to make it more sustainable and, of course, more well and less toxic.
And speaking about this lonely journey of an entrepreneur, how does ActionCOACH SA play a role in their lonely journey to make them feel less burdened?
So I think coaching takes care of a whole lot of things, but the core of what we bring to a business owner and even executives that we work with is pretty much characterized through what we call the CARE program. We bring a sense of community. So you don't feel isolated, you're not on your own, you're meeting with like-minded business owners, you meet regularly with your coach. So there is a level of community that takes place. Then there's also accountability. You know, who's looking over your shoulder, pushing you to do things that you need to do, but also at times giving you a pat on the back, supporting you, holding your hand, walking together on that journey. So there is accountability that's important. And then the R would stand for results. Business is about getting results, whether you like it or not. We're always chasing something, and you will have a partner in your corner to do that. And then the last one, the E, as part of the CARE model, is education. We're sending people to Mars. Brilliant. But we still don't teach people how to run a business anywhere in the world. And people generally learn through trial and error, making mistakes, stuff like that. Well, that's no longer sustainable. So if you break that down, we always say, you know, as your coach, I'm your unreasonable friend. I'll be your friend, but I'm not going to be always nice. I'm going to push, I'm going to challenge, and I'm going to make sure that we get growth. That's important.
And as you mentioned, using this model, it definitely covers different aspects in an entrepreneur's life because, as you mentioned, the self and the repetition thereof is also quite important because as entrepreneurs sometimes don't think that they do as much because it is, I want to reach that point, but I'm not doing enough. I need to get there. But in the meantime, you're doing 10 people's job as one person with only 24 hours in a day. So often you hardly get sleep, or some nights you don't have sleep at all. So speaking about the work environment being conducive for a person, what tips can you give for them to make it conducive for themselves, being an entrepreneur and self-employed?
So I think this will be generic to everybody, not just necessarily for entrepreneurs. But I think the first thing one needs to understand is you need a little bit of a growth mindset in life. I think it's easy to fall into the trap of seeing things as fixed.
Yes.
Well, if you do that, you feel like you're a victim of your own circumstance. And a growth mindset allows you to go, irrespective of the challenge I'm facing, I will find a way. There is a way. I might not have it yet. I must find a way. So a growth mindset is the first one. I think the second one is, we just call it building grit. Somebody said to me the other day, what's the most important trait of an entrepreneur or a leader as such? And I said, resilience is probably it. You are going to have to bounce back and bounce back often. And the quicker you can, the better for you. Change, I think, is inevitable. And the problem with words we've used in society like pivot and disrupt and things like that, we think change is an event and then we get through it and it's gone forever. No, then the next change is there. So we need to be able to bounce back, and resilience is a skill. You get better at it when you practice. I think as much as it's a theory, we don't practice it nearly enough. And that's why we say practicing gratitude.
Yeah.
It's fine to say, oh, I'm grateful for my health. Yet I've had 4 Krispy Kreme donuts in a row. Not grateful for things often until we've lost it. And I remember somebody saying to me once, whilst there might be millions of people that have more than what you have, there are billions with a B, that are going to bed every night praying for what you have. So I think when we look at life, we often look at what we don't have. Let's rather look at what we do have, and gratitude is very important. And if we realize that, then in giving back to others, helping others, guiding others, we feel better about ourselves. It almost relieves a lot of our stress when we're seeing other people struggle and we're helping through that. And I think leaders and entrepreneurs in particular are really good at that. They like helping. They like giving back. The other two that we know the theory, and when life gets tough, we neglect. The one is getting rest, and the other one's good old exercise, fresh air, just walking about. And it's neglecting that self that we often do. You can only give to others what you have in reserve. And once you've depleted all the reserves, there's nothing left to give. So we always look at a bucket and analogy. If you're filling up that bucket with water, you're able to pass on to others. But if you're not filling up the water and you're only passing on to others, you will run out. And that's when people have things like burnout and failure, and relationships break down, and health issues. So those are typically things that will help anybody, but particularly entrepreneurs.
And I think it's so thought-provoking, the things that you are mentioning, because at times we have these conversations that are so... It's almost as if we are having a conversation, but there's not actually substance to that conversation, which also contributes to how we react to things. And 2 things that you also mentioned that stood out to me was resilience and results. So if we look at the 2, perhaps I'm sure you can disagree with me, that it is bouncing from results to resilience constantly, because when you have a poor result, you have resilience through that, so you can get better results. So depending on what you have currently, or what the outcome was of whatever it is that you put in, your resilience and your reaction will also determine what the future result in that would be. So this is just a thought that I had. And one thing I wanted to also point out is that you mentioned education, and irrespective of where you are in life, how important is it to you in the process of whether it is the coaching, whether it is your entrepreneurial journey, whether it is in a business, how important is education in any of those journeys?
See, I think education, and we can talk about education for days on end, I think the system of education that we understand has created this fantasy that says, I go to school, I might be privileged to go to university, and then I stop learning. Well, let's take it out of education. A universal law of everything is if you are not growing, you are dying. Whether that's in nature, whether that's the universe, whether that's your relationship, whether that's your mind. And therefore, education is a forever journey. And it's critical that you're constantly learning. Now, that could be from a coach. That could be from a book, a seminar. It could just be from Google or YouTube. And ironically, we will search how to change a light bulb, how to fix the washing machine, where's the best place to go for dinner. But we don't do the same in our business. We don't Google and search and watch videos on how to do things in our business. Because entrepreneurs, leaders generally are positive people. So when you talk about results and resilience, the danger with a lot of leaders and entrepreneurs are they don't get the result they want. They bounce back from it. They're resilient, but they do the same thing expecting a different result. Well, no, you need to then take a step back. And I think that's not nearly appreciated nearly enough in life, is thinking time. We're so busy that we haven't got time to think and analyze and go, okay, well, why am I not getting the right result? What's happened? What should be happening? What do I need to change? It doesn't help I wake up an hour earlier tomorrow morning and just run faster. I need to fix the issue, and therefore that thinking time is part of learning that needs to come into play.
And I think it's vital that you are mentioning all of these different aspects, and especially that if you aren't growing, you are dying, because sometimes it becomes a norm for you to be in this constant cycle, and you become bored and you're wondering why is this happening? I just don't feel good at this space anymore. I don't feel good in this job anymore. Whereas when you do have those opportunities to perhaps show something different or do something different, we don't always take those opportunities. So how do you feel us as people, as workers, as employees or managers, business owners should take ownership of how we do things and improve on that with our mindset being on growth?
I think across all those people you just mentioned, I think what we're seeing more and more globally to an extent, but definitely in South Africa, is a little bit of a paralysis. People are paralyzed in the moment and the stress that there are, and they're not seeing a future. Well, here's the challenge with that. If you don't see a future, you won't build it. If you don't see a future in your relationship, you won't build it. If you don't see a future in your health, you won't build it. If you don't see a future in your career or your business, you won't build it. So we've got people working in an organization together, whether they be managers, leaders, or employees, not seeing a future or not seeing the same future. Well, that's where it starts. We need to go back and say, why are we here? What are we looking to achieve? What does that future look like? And what do we as a group, because nobody can do this journey alone, what do we as a group need to do to build towards that? And then we'll get traction. Then we'll get out of our paralysis. Until then, we just expend a lot of energy and go nowhere. And I think that's what's happening a lot in our country at the moment. So find the future you're prepared to build.
And finding that future, as you mentioned, we can't do anything alone. And often when we are in a workplace, we might be within a team. However, we aren't team players. So how do you advise we implement things in our lives or within our mindset to be better team players and make that team more productive for ourselves and for everyone as well?
Well, I think human beings as a rule, and we quickly forget this, human beings are wired to contribute. It doesn't matter what level in organization we play, we're wired to contribute. And often we're waiting for somebody else to come and allow us to contribute. Well, put your hand up, open your mouth, volunteer. Where can I contribute? And somebody said to me the other day, the problem with business is nobody's honest. I said, yeah, but the problem with business too is not necessarily are people dishonest. We're just not talking. So nobody's lying, but nobody's telling the truth either. So if we're having conversations, if we are discussing, then we can find ways to contribute. And I think every single one of us know that in whatever area of our life is, we're not giving 100%. Good. So what could you do to move you from wherever you are closer to 100%? And that may mean arranging a meeting to have a conversation with somebody. That might be at a meeting putting your hand up and say, I volunteer to do that. I need some skills and training in some different area. I see a colleague is stressed or my boss is stressed. Let me take some of that pressure away. And in doing that, we all grow. And I think somebody said this way in the beginning when we were going through the pandemic. If nobody's prepared to change, then we all lose. But if we all give a little bit, we'll all get through this and we all have the ability to win. And I think that is it. In a team environment, 1 + 1 should not equal 1 or even 2. 1 + 1 should equal 3, 4, 10, 20, 30, because combined we can do a lot more.
And as you mentioned, combined, we can do a lot more. And with us combining as individuals with ActionCOACH SA, how would that benefit us? And if anyone would like to engage with ActionCOACH SA, how can they contact you, or how can they view maybe your social media or website?
Okay. So I think coaching is for anybody that hasn't arrived at their final destination. So if you're in a business and you aren't where you believe the final destination to be, well, then there's a gap. And our role is to help bridge that gap with you from a business perspective. So the easiest is to go to the website, actioncoach.co.za. There's a whole lot of free resources that you can download. You can have a look at our programs. We're running events. We're doing a brilliant women's event. We've been doing it for the last 4 years, which is free to all businesswomen. It's called Thriving Women's Entrepreneurial Summit. We register for that tomorrow. But also on social media, Action Coach Southern Africa is most of the handles, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. And I think engage with us, use the content, and realize this: no human being will achieve their full potential on their own. And whether it's somebody else or we have the privilege to work with you one day, get the input you need to go to that next level.
It was definitely a pleasure, and that's also such inspiring words to end off with for our segment. I'm sure that we can definitely speak about this topic for much, much longer. There's so many avenues to explore, even when we started at this one humble point, which is Corporate Wellness Week. So I do hope that this business and the coaching thrives, and it's able to reach many people that are looking for that guidance and want to improve on themselves, and also for those who need maybe a bit of a shove in the right direction. You can let them know about Action Coach SA. So do visit their website at actioncoach.co.za if you would like to find out on all of their programs and events they are running. As Harry mentioned, there is a free Thriving Woman program also running. It's absolutely free for all women. But thank you so much for joining us today, and you go well.
Absolutely. And remember, to everybody listening, it's not Tomorrow Coach, it's Action Coach. Do what you need to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We do have to go for ads now. That was Harry Welby-Cooke from Action Coach SA. We do return shortly after this.
This winter, donate to the Out in the Cold appeal and help vulnerable